The warning sign on the monitor blinked in sharp red letters. Hazard Designation 15, Deathworld Protocol active. Lyra stared at it, her thin blue fingers trembling. She was the only one in her class who had actually read the entire safety waiver for this so-called educational trip. 112 pages of legal nightmares describing all the ways a person could die on this planet called Earth. Now, as their ship drifted through orbit, every word of that document felt like a prophecy waiting to happen. Professor Varn said the ecosystem has been stable for centuries, muttered Rick, one of her classmates, upside down in zero gravity as he tried to spin a glowing orb between his hands. How dangerous can one planet be? Lyra didn't answer. She just turned the screen toward him. The Galactic Scholastic Council, she read, accepts no responsibility for molecular disassembly, planetary ingestion, or existential despair caused by contact with non-sterilized biospheres. She looked up, her large black eyes filled with dread. We're not landing on a planet. We're landing in a nightmare. At the front of the ship, the navigation lights dimmed. The stars vanished, replaced by the glowing marble of Earth. White clouds, deep blue oceans, and endless green land masses. It looked peaceful, beautiful even, but to them, it was the most hostile world ever cataloged by the Galactic Database. From his seat, Professor Varn adjusted his silver robe and smiled, trying to look confident. His voice, thin and shaky, filled the cabin. Relax, students. Earth may be a death world, but we'll be inside the safety dome of an old human preserve. A simple, harmless experience. Then, the first alarm went off. A deep siren cut through the calm, vibrating the metal walls. The soft white lights flickered and turned blood red. Lyra grabbed the seat straps just as the deck lurched beneath her. Rick slammed into the ceiling, shouting in panic. Atmospheric instability detected, yelled the ship's AI. Stabilizers offline. Recommend immediate course correction. Varn's smile collapsed. His long fingers danced over the controls, but every screen filled with angry crimson warnings. Manual override denied. Descent locked. We're fine, he stammered. It's only turbulence. Then gravity failed, and they began to fall. The ship screamed as it tore through the planet's upper atmosphere. Everything shook. Sparks burst from the ceiling. Lyra's stomach rose to her throat as she felt the ship tumble end over end. Through the viewport, the blue sky twisted into a blur of green and brown. Professor, we're dropping too fast, shouted Rick, clutching the console. I can't override it. Varn cried. His pale skin looked almost translucent under the emergency lights. The system's locked onto some kind of biome coordinates. It's pulling us in. The sound was unbearable. Metal shrieking, panels exploding, the AI repeating the same doomed phrase, impact imminent. Brace for collision. Then came the crash. It wasn't a violent explosion, but a heavy, suffocating crunch, like the planet itself had swallowed the ship whole. Silence followed, heavy, wet, and final. For a moment, no one moved. Only the slow dripping of fluid somewhere behind them broke the stillness. Rick coughed, floating debris brushing his face. Are we alive? The main hatch hissed. A rush of warm, wet air filled the cabin. The smell hit them first, raw, dense, alive. It wasn't like the sterile air of their homeworld. It was thick with rot, soil, and something else, death. Lyra gagged. It smells like something's dying. Professor Varn unbuckled himself, trembling but trying to maintain authority. Remain calm, students, he said, though his voice cracked. We're simply experiencing local atmospheric conditions. The hatch creaked open wider, and a heavy beam of sunlight sliced through the cabin. Outside, enormous green shapes moved gently in the wind. Trees, their leaves dripping with moisture. Beyond them, something splashed in the murky brown water. Lyra stepped forward and froze. Two giant reptilian creatures were thrashing together in the swamp, their jaws snapping like thunder. Water turned red as one sank its teeth into the other. It was brutal, savage, and real. She couldn't look away. This wasn't a hologram. This was life, raw, unfiltered, and merciless. Professor Varn's voice was little more than a whisper now. This is why they call it a death world. Then, from somewhere in the trees, came another sound, a deep, distant growl that made every hair on their skin stand up. Lyra swallowed hard, realizing the truth. This was only the beginning of their lesson. Steam rose from the cracks of the ship like ghostly smoke. The air outside pulsed with heat and life. Every sound sharp and alive in a way no sterile world could match. The forest around them hissed, buzzed, croaked, and screamed in an endless chorus. It felt like the entire planet was watching them. Lyra pressed her palm to the doorframe, feeling the strange humidity cling to her skin like a living thing. "It's wet," she whispered, staring at the heavy air. "The atmosphere feels thick, like it wants to crawl inside us." Rick peered through the opening, eyes wide. "There are creatures everywhere. Look, those flying dots. Thousands of them. Probably harmless," Professor Varn said, though he didn't sound convinced. His voice trembled. He adjusted his breathing mask and forced a smile that fooled no one. "Stay near the ramp. The environmental suits will protect us." The ramp extended with a hiss, its polished surface glistening with condensation. The professor took one hesitant step forward, his boots sinking slightly into the mud. A smell hit him, strong, earthy, and metallic, as if the ground itself was bleeding. His legs froze. "Go on, Professor," Rick said nervously. "You first." Varn stared at the swamp stretching ahead, tall grass, black water, and massive trees twisting into a green sky. Something splashed nearby, large enough to shake the surface. He took another step, then stopped. His breathing quickened. "No," he whispered, backing up slowly. "Something's wrong. This world, it's awake." Lyra frowned. "What do you mean?" Before he could answer, the ramp vibrated beneath them. A low rumble rolled through the mud. For a brief second, Lyra thought it was thunder, until she saw the ripples in the water. Dozens of bubbles rose to the surface near the edge of the swamp. Then something dark slid beneath the waterline, fast and silent. "Inside. Now," Varn shouted. But it was too late. The shape erupted upward, breaking through the surface with an explosion of brown water and white teeth. It was massive, scaled, armored, ancient. The jaws snapped shut on empty air just meters from the ramp. The creature's roar echoed like a broken thunderclap before it sank back into the water, leaving only chaos and splashing behind. Rick stumbled backward, shaking. What was that? Lyra's translator flickered with a reading. Species match, alligator mississippiensis. Status, apex predator. Estimated jaw force, 8,000 newtons. She blinked, heart hammering. 8,000. Professor Varn looked ready to faint. That's impossible. Nothing in the database survives at those pressure levels. He clutched his communicator, voice trembling. We shouldn't even be breathing this air. The ship creaked again, the hull groaning under stress. The temperature inside was already rising as the damaged systems tried to stabilize. Lights flickered. The AI's calm, detached voice spoke again. Warning, power cell fracture detected. Cooling failure in 46 hours. Evacuation recommended. Evacuation? Rick repeated, almost laughing. To where? The planet wants to kill us. Lyra's gaze drifted back to the swamp. The giant reptile had vanished, but something else was moving in the shadows. Dozens of smaller eyes shimmered among the reeds, red, yellow, and unblinking. Her voice was barely a whisper. We're not alone. Varn backed toward the control panel. No one steps outside, he said sharply. Not another centimeter. The human preserve is supposed to be sealed. Something must have gone wrong here. He slapped the ramp control, but it jammed halfway. The door groaned, stuck in place. A humid breeze blew in, carrying a strange buzzing sound. Not mechanical, not wind. Something small brushed past Lyra's neck. She swatted instinctively, and her hand came back with a smear of red. Tiny winged insects swarmed through the air like glittering dust, biting, stinging, probing for weakness. Professor, they're inside, she cried. Rick shouted, flailing. They're attacking. They're drinking our blood. Varn slapped wildly at his own arms, panic breaking through his composure. Stay calm. They're insignificant life forms. The insects didn't care about logic. They crawled under collars, into sleeves, and against thin alien skin unprepared for a Deathworld's hunger. Lyra felt fire race down her arm. The pain was sharp, raw, and shockingly real. Insignificant. Rick gasped. They're eating us alive. They scrambled for the emergency med packs, spraying sterilizer mist that did almost nothing. The buzzing only grew louder, thicker, alive with purpose. Varn retreated toward the cockpit, slamming the emergency lock. The door sealed behind him. His voice came through the intercom, trembling. I can't go out there. You're on your own. Lyra froze, disbelief washing over her. He locked us out. The sound of the outer door clanging shut echoed through the cabin like a final verdict. The red lights dimmed. Outside, the swamp roared and buzzed and breathed. Rick looked at Lyra, his face pale. What do we do now? She glanced at the cracked console, the blinking power warnings, and the endless green world beyond the ramp. Her voice was small but steady. We survive. The silence that followed the professor's cowardly retreat was worse than the alarms. It was heavy, wet, and alive. The air inside the half-broken ship felt like a sealed coffin, hot and suffocating. Lyra could hear her own heartbeat echoing in her ears, fast and uneven. Rick kicked the sealed cockpit door, shouting, "You can't leave us out here." No answer. Only the faint hum of dying systems and the distant screech of some unseen animal outside. "He's gone," Lyra said quietly. He locked himself inside the command chamber. Her voice cracked. "We're stranded." Rick turned, eyes wide and frantic. "Then we'll die here. This planet's poison. Look at my arm." His pale skin was swollen with angry red bumps. Each bite oozed faintly. His translator beeped, scanning. Foreign pathogens detected. Unknown classification. Estimated microbial population, billions. The word billions sent a chill through them both. Their bodies weren't made for chaos like this. Their nanites, designed for sterile space environments, struggled and failed to understand what was attacking them. Lyra forced herself to think. The professor said there's a ranger tower. It's supposed to be 20 miles from this crash site. Rick stared at her as if she'd gone mad. 20 miles. Through that. He pointed toward the swamp, where vines hung like snakes and the water rippled with unseen movement. "We wouldn't last an hour." Lyra swallowed. "If we stay here, we'll suffocate in 46 hours. If we move, maybe we'll make it." She looked out the open ramp, into the humid haze where sunlight flickered through monstrous leaves. "We have no choice." They tore open a supply locker and grabbed what they could: light scanners, a med pack, a thermal beamer, and a cracked navigation pad. Every motion felt clumsy. The ship's gentle artificial gravity had been replaced by a pull that made their bones ache. Rick adjusted his breathing mask, muttering, "This place feels heavier, like the planet's trying to drag us down." Lyra stepped onto the ramp first. Her boots sank instantly into warm mud. The smell of rot slammed into her face, rich, foul, and overwhelming. Her lungs rebelled, her stomach twisted, but she forced herself forward. Every step was a battle. The mud clung like glue, and the buzzing cloud of insects followed, relentless. She swatted one away only to have 3 more land. Rick stumbled behind her. "My suit's leaking humidity. I can feel it breathing through the fabric." "Keep moving," she said. "Don't stop. Not for anything." They trudged through the swamp until the ship was just a metallic shadow behind them. The forest swallowed them whole. The sounds were endless: croaks, hisses, rustles, growls. Every noise was sharp enough to make their hearts jump. The ground shifted under their feet like a living thing. Lyra's scanner flickered. Movement everywhere. The soil's crawling with organisms. Rick looked down. Tiny shapes darted just below the muddy surface. Worms, insects, things that twisted and vanished too fast to identify. They're everywhere. Even the ground's alive. A sudden splash made them both freeze. Something massive slid into the water a few meters away, sending ripples across the swamp. Then came another sound, a deep, guttural bellow that vibrated in their bones. Lyra raised her beamer light. 2 golden eyes glared back from the darkness. The creature didn't blink. It just watched. Rick whispered, "Predator." Before she could answer, the eyes vanished. The water stilled. Nothing moved. They didn't speak after that. They just walked, step after terrified step, until the trees thickened and the sunlight faded to green twilight. Then the storm came. It began with a distant rumble, then a flash that turned the sky white. Thunder followed, shaking the ground like artillery fire. A second later, the rain fell, not drops, but sheets of warm, pounding water that struck like small stones. Within seconds, they were drenched. The mud turned to liquid. Their suits clung to their skin. The air shimmered with heat and steam. "Keep moving," Lyra shouted over the storm. We need higher ground. They pushed forward through waist-deep water, lightning flashing overhead. Every flash revealed monstrous shapes, branches, roots, or perhaps things pretending to be branches and roots. Once, Lyra thought she saw a massive reptilian tail vanish beneath the surface. By the time the storm began to fade, exhaustion had carved lines into their faces. Their hands trembled. Their legs ached. But they had made it. A small patch of dry ground surrounded by roots as thick as columns. They collapsed there, gasping. The rain softened to a gentle drizzle. Steam rose from the earth like smoke. Rick leaned back, staring at the sky. This planet, it doesn't stop, does it? Lyra wiped the mud from her visor, her expression distant. No, it doesn't rest. It never has. She looked out into the endless green world, her heart pounding. For the first time, she began to understand something strange, something almost terrifying. This world didn't just kill. It tested. And somewhere deep inside her, a spark of defiance lit up, the same defiance that made humanity thrive here in the first place. Morning on Earth came suddenly. The night's storm had passed, leaving the air thick with mist and the ground shining like glass. Every surface glistened, the trees, the water, even the mud. Drops hung from the leaves like tiny mirrors, reflecting a pale sun that burned through the fog. Lyra stirred first. Her body ached, her joints stiff. The gravity here was cruel, dragging every movement into slow motion. Rick sat nearby, his knees pulled to his chest, his eyes vacant and swollen from insect bites. "Still alive?" she asked softly. "Barely," he muttered. "If this planet doesn't kill us, the smell will." The air carried a scent both sweet and rotten, flowers blooming over decay. Something about it made Lyra uneasy. It was too alive, too wild. On their homeworld, every breath was filtered and measured. Here, every breath tasted like creation and destruction at once. She lifted her scanner. The display flickered weakly, the battery drained. "There's a metallic signature about a kilometer east," she said, voice trembling with hope. "Maybe part of our ship, or maybe the tower." Rick groaned. "Or maybe another monster." Lyra stood anyway. "If we stay here, we'll die? If we move, maybe we'll find something." He didn't argue this time. He just nodded and followed. The path led them through a wall of vines thick as cables. Each one dripped with dew that looked beautiful until it touched their suits. The moisture hissed faintly, acidic. They moved carefully, stepping over roots that twisted like serpents. Strange bird-like cries echoed through the canopy, always just out of sight. Hours passed before the trees began to thin. The swamp gave way to solid ground, a rare hill rising from the endless green. On its crest stood something unnatural, a tower of rusting metal half swallowed by vines. "The Ranger Tower," Lyra whispered, all mixing with fear. "It's real." They climbed the slope slowly, the mud sucking at their boots. As they drew closer, they could see the structure clearly, a lattice of iron beams, broken glass panels, and what looked like solar panels shattered by time. At its base, a faded sign clung to a bent post. The letters were almost gone, but the translator made sense of them. "Wildlife Observation Post, Everglades Preserve." Rick tilted his head. Everglades. Lyra frowned. Ancient human word. Something to do with water and forest. They approached the entrance, a small door hanging crooked on its hinges. The metal was cool to the touch, covered in green growth. Lyra hesitated, then pushed it open. The door moaned like something in pain. Inside, the air was dry and heavy with dust. Their lights swept across the walls, revealing human tools, cabinets, and old screens long dead. A cracked datapad lay on a desk, its screen flickering weakly when touched. Lyra's fingers hovered over it. It still got power. The device came alive with a static hiss. Then, slowly, words appeared in a shaky font. "Log entry 2167. Final report. Ranger Mallory." Rick leaned in, his voice a whisper. "A human log?" Lyra nodded and began to read aloud. "The storms are worse this year. The old systems can't keep up. The government stopped funding these posts decades ago, but I stayed. Someone has to keep watch. The animals have grown bigger. Smarter, maybe. The swamp is changing. It's reclaiming everything. If anyone finds this, know this place doesn't belong to us anymore. It belongs to the world again." The log ended there, followed by static. Rick shivered. He stayed, even when everyone left. Lyra stared at the screen, her throat tightening. He knew this world was dangerous. But he stayed anyway. That's what humans did. Her gaze wandered to a cracked photo frame lying near the desk. Inside was a faded picture. A broad human man standing in front of the same tower, smiling, one arm resting on a mechanical vehicle behind him. There was something strange in his eyes. Confidence. Defiance. The kind of strength that didn't come from technology, but from spirit. Rick knelt beside her. They lived here? In this? Yes, she said quietly. They didn't hide behind shields or domes. They faced it. Outside, thunder rumbled again, soft but deep, as if the world itself had heard their words. Lyra turned toward the window. Through the haze, she could see the forest moving, not from wind, but from something walking. Branches swayed. Water rippled. A heavy shape shifted in the mist. Rick's voice broke the silence. Tell me that's the wind. Lyra's scanner blinked weakly, then displayed a single word before it died. Biological signature, large. She tightened her grip on the beamer. No, she whispered. That's something else. The tower groaned as the ground beneath them trembled. Something massive brushed against its foundation, unseen, but close enough to shake dust from the ceiling. Rick backed away. Lyra, what do we do? She stared out into the mist, heart pounding. We see what the Deathworld has left behind. Then the shadow moved again, closer this time, heavy and deliberate, and the faint outline of a shape unlike anything in their databases began to emerge through the fog. The sound came first, a slow, dragging crunch of boots on wet earth. Then, the tower groaned again, its old metal beams trembling. Dust rained from the ceiling. Lyra's pulse raced so fast she could hear it in her ears. She raised her light toward the window. The fog outside glowed pale white, swirling like smoke around a shadow. Something's out there, Rick whispered, voice cracking. I know, she breathed. Stay quiet. The shape moved again, not gliding like the swamp creatures they'd seen, but walking. Heavy, deliberate, bipedal. Two glowing dots appeared through the mist, steady and unblinking. Not eyes, lights. Artificial. Mechanical. For a moment, Lyra thought it was some kind of drone. But then it stepped into view. It was human. Or at least, it looked like the humans from the ancient records. Broad shoulders, thick arms, a sturdy shape wrapped in patched armor and worn fabric. A cracked helmet covered the face, its visor glowing faintly blue. A long weapon was slung across the back, and mud streaked every inch of the armor. Rick stumbled backward. That can't be. Humanity's extinct on this planet. Lyra stared in disbelief. Then what is that? The figure stopped a few meters from the tower, silent, studying it. Then, with a slow, metallic hiss, it raised an arm, not in threat, but in greeting. A distorted voice crackled through the helmet speakers, deep and tired. Whoever's in there, you'd better not be another one of those survey drones. I'm not in the mood. Rick's translator blinked, trying to decode the words. He's speaking English, it murmured in monotone. Lyra took a step forward. He's alive. The figure turned suddenly, pointing the weapon toward the doorway. Identify yourself. Lyra froze. We're explorers. Students, she shouted, the words tumbling out. We crashed. Our ship's destroyed. There was silence. The human didn't lower his weapon immediately. He scanned the tower entrance, his glowing visor flickering like a heartbeat. Then, slowly, he exhaled, a sound heavy with exhaustion. The rifle lowered. Well, he muttered, you picked a bad time to visit hell. He stepped into the tower, boots squelching in the mud. The air filled with the smell of rust, oil, and something faintly metallic, blood. His armor was dented and scarred. Close up, Lyra could see the faint shimmer of sweat under the helmet. He wasn't a machine. He was flesh and bone. Rick stammered, why, you're human? But the archives said. Yeah, the man interrupted. They said a lot of things. Most of them lies. He pulled off his helmet with a slow twist, revealing a bearded face marked by sun and age. His eyes were sharp, yet kind, the kind that had seen too much and survived anyway. Name's Cole, he said. Ranger Corps, last one left, I guess. Lyra's mind spun. You've been here all this time? Cole shrugged. Someone's got to keep the fires burning. Can't let the swamp have it all. He glanced around the room, eyes landing on the flickering console. Did you wake that thing up? Lyra nodded. It still had logs. We read the last one. Cole chuckled softly. Mallory. He was my mentor. Stubborn old fool. Never left, even when the world turned against us. Guess I inherited the post. Rick took a cautious step forward. You've survived here alone? Cole smirked. Survived? No. Adapted. There's a difference. He reached into a pouch and pulled out a small metal flask, taking a sip before offering it to them. Hydration's important out here. The air'll dry you out even when it feels wet. Rick sniffed the air and recoiled. That smell, it's poison. Cole laughed, a deep, genuine sound that filled the tower. Kid, that's just sweat and whiskey. You'll get used to both. Outside, thunder rolled again. Cole turned toward the window, eyes narrowing. We've got a storm coming. Not rain this time, wind. Big one. He strapped his helmet back on and checked his rifle. You two aren't safe here. Tower's too old. It'll fold like paper. Then where do we go? Lyra asked. There's an old outpost a few miles north. High ground. Solid walls. You can rest there, if you can keep up. Rick hesitated. We're not built for this world. Cole turned to face him, his tone suddenly sharp. No one's built for this world. You survive it by earning it. His words hung heavy in the humid air. He stepped outside into the mist, the wind tugging at his coat. For a moment, the blue glow of his visor caught the rising sun, and Lyra saw what the Deathworld had done. It hadn't killed him. It had forged him. Lyra followed, her fear replaced by something new. Respect. This was humanity, the species that had called this living nightmare home. And now, standing on their broken world, she began to understand the truth whispered across the galaxy. Humans didn't conquer Deathworlds. They became them. The wind struck like a living beast. It howled through the trees, bending trunks that had stood for centuries. Branches snapped like bones. The air was no longer air. It was force, pressure, motion. The swamp roared with it. Cole moved first, pushing against the gale, every step steady and sure. His heavy boots sank into the mud, but his rhythm never faltered. Lyra and Rick stumbled behind, half running, half falling. Their thin suits, made for sterile labs and gravity-controlled ships, clung to their skin and filled with cold rain. Stay low, Cole shouted over the chaos. His voice cut through the wind like steel. Keep your masks tight and follow the lights. Lightning flashed, bright enough to turn the world white. For a heartbeat, they saw everything. The endless swamp, the twisting trees, the sky boiling with black clouds. And in that instant, they saw movement. Shapes in the storm. Not human. Not friendly. Cole, Lyra screamed. Something's following us. He didn't look back. Let it. Storms cover enough for both sides. We just move faster. The wind whipped their words away, but his calm presence anchored them. He didn't panic. Didn't hesitate. He walked through the end of the world like it was just another shift. They waded through knee-deep water as the storm built to a roar. Each drop of rain hit like a slap. Lyra's visor fogged. Her lungs burned. She tried to speak, but the air was too thick. Her scanner flickered weakly, then went dead. Rick tripped over a submerged root and fell face first into the muck. The swamp tried to claim him, sucking at his limbs like claws. He screamed, thrashing helplessly. I can't move. I'm sinking. Cole turned instantly. Without a word, he dropped his rifle and dove into the water. His hands, rough and scarred, grabbed Rick's arm and yanked with brutal force. Mud clung like chains, but Cole pulled harder, his muscles straining, his breath steady. With a final heave, Rick came free, gasping and shaking. Cole hauled him upright. You panic, you drown, he said simply. You breathe, you live. Understand. Rick nodded weakly, unable to speak. They pressed on. The world around them was chaos, flashes of light, crashing trees, the endless drum of water. Through it all, Cole moved like part of the storm itself, never slowing, never breaking stride. Finally, through the blur of rain, Lyra saw something, dark shapes rising ahead. A wall. A building. Cole. The outpost, she shouted. He turned his head slightly, nodding once. Almost there. Move. The ground rose under their feet as they climbed onto the higher ridge. The outpost stood ahead, old, battered, half swallowed by vines, but still standing. Its metal frame hummed in the wind like a defiant song. Cole slammed his shoulder into the door. The hinges shrieked, then gave way, spilling them into the dark interior. He kicked it shut behind them, locking the heavy latch. For the first time in hours, silence fell. Only the muffled scream of the storm outside remained. Lyra collapsed to the floor, gasping. How are you still standing? Cole wiped the mud from his face, his eyes steady. You don't fight a storm, he said. You endure it. Rick leaned against the wall, shivering. Your planet, it's alive. It hates us. Cole chuckled, low and tired. It doesn't hate. It just is. Earth doesn't care who you are. She'll crush you, drown you, burn you, but if you stand through it, she'll let you stay. Lyra looked around the outpost. It was filled with relics, old human equipment, faded banners, a cracked photograph of a smiling team. Generators hummed faintly in one corner, still alive after centuries. Cole noticed her gaze. Humans built things to last, even when we didn't. He removed his soaked jacket, revealing scars across his arms, bite marks, burns, old wounds. Everything here tried to kill us once. Disease, storms, beasts, even our own kind. But we learned, adapted, and fought back. We made this world our teacher. Rick frowned. Why stay then? Why not leave? Cole turned toward the door, his shadow long and dark against the flickering light. Because this world made us who we are. And someone has to remember that. The wind outside began to fade. The storm had passed, leaving only the slow drip of water and the deep, rhythmic hum of insects waking again. Lyra stood, her voice soft. You survived everything this planet threw at you. Alone. Cole gave a faint, tired smile. Not alone anymore. He looked at the two fragile aliens standing in his old world, mud-stained, terrified, yet alive. In their wide eyes, he saw something he hadn't seen in years. Curiosity, respect, hope. And for the first time since humanity fell silent among the stars, he felt something stirred deep inside him. Pride. The storm was gone. But silence never truly existed on Earth. The swamp sang again, frogs croaking, insects buzzing, wind whispering through broken glass. The air smelled of rain and soil, heavy with life. The planet had survived the night like it always did. Lyra sat near the window, watching faint mist rise from the trees. Every sound, every scent, every shifting shadow felt alive. This world didn't sleep, it simply changed its rhythm. Rick was repairing a cracked sensor while Cole adjusted the outpost's old power system. Sparks lit the dark room with flashes of orange. Lyra's voice broke the quiet. Your world is chaos. Yet you call it home. Cole looked up from his work. Home doesn't mean safe. It means worth it. He tightened a wire and stood, stretching his shoulders. Humans learned that the hard way. We were born on this rock, surrounded by things that wanted to eat us, poison us, or bury us. But we didn't hide. We learned to fight, to build, to endure. Rick frowned. Endure? For what? Your species could have lived anywhere easier. Cole smiled faintly. Because easy doesn't teach you anything. Outside, a low rumble echoed through the swamp, deep, guttural, and close. The walls of the outpost vibrated slightly. Lyra turned sharply toward the window. Please tell me that's thunder. Cole's expression hardened. Not thunder. Something big. He grabbed his rifle and moved to the door. Stay back. The rumble grew louder, now joined by splashes, snapping branches, and the unmistakable sound of something massive pushing through the trees. Lyra's hands shook as she activated her last scanner cell. The display flickered to life. Biological signature. Unknown. Size estimate. 12 meters. Apex class. Rick whispered, a predator? Cole nodded slowly. The swamp's oldest lesson. There's always something bigger. He stepped outside into the mist. Lyra followed, heart hammering. The water before them rippled, then exploded upward as a massive creature rose from the depths. A monstrous reptile, scarred and ancient. Its head alone was larger than their ship's cockpit. Teeth like knives glistened in the morning light. The ground shook as it crawled onto the shore, its eyes yellow and cold. Rick stumbled backward. That's impossible. It shouldn't exist. Cole didn't flinch. He raised his rifle, calm as stone. Stay behind me, he said. The creature hissed, its breath steaming. Its tail lashed through the air, splintering a tree like a twig. Mud sprayed everywhere. The beast opened its mouth wide, revealing darkness and death. Cole didn't move. He waited, perfectly still, until the creature lunged. Then he fired. The rifle's cracks split the air like lightning. The beast recoiled, roaring, thrashing wildly. Cole fired again, and again, Each shot precise, measured. Steam rose from the weapon barrel. Lyra watched in awe. His movements were not panic, but instinct. The swamp's chaos didn't frighten him. He was part of it. When the weapon finally clicked empty, the giant reptile turned, bellowed one last time, and sank back into the water with a furious splash. Cole lowered the rifle and exhaled. "You don't kill Earth," he said. "You just convince it to let you live another day." Lyra stared at him, speechless. She had seen death, storms, and monsters. But nothing terrified her as much as what stood before her now. A creature of flesh and willpower who refused to bow to a world designed to destroy him. Rick whispered, trembling. "Now I understand why they called your kind Deathworlders." Cole turned, eye sharp beneath his helmet visor. "No," he said quietly. "We called it home because no one else could." He walked back, toward the tower, the light of dawn breaking behind him. The mist glowed gold, and for the first time, Lyra saw Earth not as a monster, but as a teacher. She followed him slowly, her voice soft but filled with wonder. If one human could survive this, what would happen if your kind ever came back? Cole paused at the doorway, his silhouette framed by the rising sun. He looked back over his shoulder, a faint grin touching his face. "They won't come back," he said. "They'll rise from the dirt. Because that's what we do." Then, from somewhere deep in the forest, another human voice echoed, faint, distant, but real. Cole froze. The grin widened. "Guess I'm not the last one after all." Lyra and Rick stared into the mist as more shapes began to appear. Tall, armored figures moving through the haze, carrying tools, weapons, and torches. Dozens of them. Humans. Alive. The swamp trembled beneath their footsteps. The death world had never been empty. It had only been waiting. And now, it seemed, humanity was awake again.